If you found out that everyone in your town was actually bloodthirsty vampires, what would you do? Almost everyone you know is an undead monster out for blood, and no one is coming to save you. I'm going to break down the mistakes made, what you should do, and how to beat the vampires in Shiki. This kid has no idea that bloodthirsty vampires are coming to kill him. Natsuno here has just discovered a horrifying secret, that all the recent deaths in his village have been caused by terrifying vampires, infecting men, women, and innocent children, causing them to die and come back to life for blood. Most of this town has already begun to turn, and all of them now know that Natsuno and his buddies have figured out this town's horrifying secret, and everybody prepares for the fight of their lives. Natsuno runs back home just as his family tells him that a strange little girl has stopped by to talk to him. He goes to meet her in his room, but she's nowhere to be found, and this causes Natsuno to freak out. This kid's parents have no idea what's really going on, but Natsuno knows that this little girl, along with every other vampire within this village, are going to attack this house tonight. Okay, this is insane. We've just found out that all of these deaths in our village that we thought were because of a virus are actually because of vampires. And this means that literally we need to focus on preparing ourselves for the horrors soon to come. Over the last few months, dozens of people died. And if that means that all of them turned into vampires, that means there are literally dozens of vampires walking around right outside. And the fact that they just showed up in our house means that our only home fortress is now at risk. Because think about it, whichever vampire was in our room could have snuck in through the window and surprised attacked us when we got home. But since our joy of a parents mentioned letting in a strange little girl, that means they didn't sneak in. They were let in by our stupid parents, which more than likely means that this type of vampire needs permission to enter our homes. And while our home is now compromised, at least we know this is a part of their weakness. But nevertheless, our parents don't have a clue about what's going on, nor would they likely believe us if we told them about vampires taking over the village, because yeah, that would go over oh so well. And unless we choose to leave our parents here to eventually die, which we could do, let's try and save them because they seem like nice people, I guess. In this case, I take into account that Natsuno's dad is some kind of woodworker or carpenter based on what we've seen in his workshop. With this in mind, I would wait for my parents to head to bed first, before sneaking into his workshop, snag a bunch of tools, and make a whole crap ton of crosses. And since this isn't an art competition, they don't need to be perfect, which means I'll be able to make a lot of them very quickly. I would litter them all around the outskirts of the house, hidden behind whatever bush or object that prevents my parents from seeing it, and probably removing it, which would ideally create some sort of holy perimeter fence around the area. But along with this, I would also try and plant smaller wooden crosses and stakes around the house, hidden under the kitchen sink, under the living room couch, and maybe even under their bed and in their closet if I am sneaky enough. And then for good measure, I would place as many crosses wherever I can all over the house, in the off chance a vampire or Shiki does attack us while we're home. At the very least, we have a fighting chance. Now realistically, this is a short-term plan, but as soon as daylight hits, we're okay, we'll be fine. And the first thing I'm going to do is to get in touch with the town doctor, who has been at the front lines investigating all of the deaths, because realistically, he knows way more than us right now, and he's probably the only one who can break it to our parents as to what's really going on. We just have to survive tonight, and time is not on our side. Natsuno gets ready for the horde of vampires that's about to walk through his door, and he calls his friends to tell them what has just happened. He tells them that because his parents invited a vampire in, this house is no longer protected. He tells this kid to not let his parents invite anyone inside their house, no matter what. Meanwhile, Natsuno's dad passes by his room and sees all the crosses and craziness, and suddenly thinks that his son is a bona fide weirdo. Natsuno later comes back to find all of his vampire protection taken down. His dad tells him to chill out on the religion, and this forces Natsuno to protect his house the old-fashioned way, by staying up, sharp and alert all night long. He waits for death to come knocking on his door, just as he hears something banging outside. A black figure suddenly appears, but it has a familiar voice that Natsuno recognizes in shock. It's his dead best friend, very much alive. He cautiously opens the door and sees Toru, who is now a bloodthirsty vampire. He finds out that his best friend has been ordered by the vampire boss to kill him, but instead, Toru tells Natsuno to run from this town before it's too late. He then disappears back into the forest at lightning quick speed. Natsuno chases after him demanding answers right as he bumps into this horrifying vampire boss, blue-haired guy, and he tells Natsuno that his plan to stop these vampires is about to come to a horrifying end. Blue-haired guy prepares to kill him right here, just as Toru slips behind him and gives him some sheep to count. The very next day, the town's doctor, Toshio, struggles to plan his next move. Just like Natsuno, he knows this town is becoming more undead by the day, but he's all out of ideas. Just then, a whole mob appears outside, led by this crazy lady. This woman claims that she too knows about the vampire's secret and blames everything on this family who moved in right before all these horrors started. She then drags a reluctant Toshio, and the mob begins to bang on this family's castle doors. Just then, this fancy lord guy comes out, and the mob demands that Toshio checks this guy's pulse to see if he is a vampire or not. Okay, now on the surface, while this seems like a bad idea to call the crazy shaman lady crazy, let's think about this for a second. We still barely know how to kill these vampires or what works or doesn't work on them. This means that if we barely know anything yet, informing the village about the horrifying truth will only make things worse, because right now, the vampires are killing off villagers slowly and one by one, and are obviously the most active at night, which is when we as humans will be at our most vulnerable. So if we tip off these vampires that we actually know what they are and are going to do something about it, that's going to cause them to accelerate their plans, and we still don't know for sure where they sleep or how effectively to kill them. So the best method, while it sucks, would be actually to do what Toshio is doing right now until we figure out a proper plan of how to deal with these things. Play ball and don't cause any trouble that we can avoid for now. And also, for the sake of common sense, let's think about this for a second. These vampires are probably centuries old, which means they're more than likely have dealt with dozens, if not hundreds of people over the years who've gotten too close to finding out their real secret. Being a vampire means keeping this truth a secret, at least until they affect enough of the village's population. Means they're not gonna do anything for now. They probably know how to act normal and how to trick the villagers into thinking that they're just ordinary humans. Toshio is actually going about this right, because the only way to reveal the truth to the townspeople will be to catch the vampires with their undead pants down when they least expect it. Until then, we just need to play it cool. Toshio checks Fancy Lord Guy's pulse, but is stunned to find out that he has a pulse. This shocks the whole crowd, who then goes home empty-handed and out of ideas. But Toshio knows that this guy is up to no good and is working with the vampires somehow. Elsewhere, these two kids run into Natsuno with wild ideas on how to save this town from horrifying vampires. But something is not right with him, and he shows them that he's been bitten. It won't be long before he turns into a terrifying monster himself. Natsuno tells these kids to run far away from him and never come back, but he has no idea that these stupid bastards will try to take on the vampire army themselves. Later that night, Natsuno catches Toru near his family's house, and he tries to convince his best friend to work together with him. Natsuno thinks the vampires and humans can live together in this town, and he even offers to let Toru feed on him until he figures out a proper plan to save this village. But Toru is too hungry to listen and attacks Natsuno without a second thought, and he feasts on his best friend's blood, forcing Natsuno to give up all hope. He knows that he now can't save anybody, and he soon will turn into the very thing that took so many innocent lives. The next day, these two kids show up back at Natsuno's door and prepare to discuss their ongoing attack plans. But that's when Natsuno's father answers the door and gives them horrifying news. He tells them that Natsuno is dead. Okay, this is horrifying, and now our only vampire hunting ally is dead. This means we can no longer rely on anyone else to put a stop to this except ourselves. But let's be honest here, we're kids, barely tall enough to ride a roller coaster, and the boy is barely man enough to handle a Japanese shave kit. So what are we really talking about here? Our ally is dead, and convincing our parents at this point won't do much because they won't believe any vampire story we tell them until they see one for themselves, which they won't believe it anyways. And to top off the bad news, if the vampires get us, that means we'll become one of them, which means we'll turn immortal and live forever, which sounds great at first, to live forever. But I don't know about you guys, the thought of being stuck in a 10-year-old's body forever sounds even more terrifying than becoming a vampire itself. Think about it. We won't ever be able to go watch an R-rated movie, drive a car, fit in adult-sized clothes. Heck, we won't even be able to go to a bar without somebody telling us we can't be there, or worse, try to talk to us in a very, very bad way. This means it's even more terrifying if we got turned into a vampire at this moment. So we really gotta think about how to play our cards moving forward. It's not clear if Natsuno, through his research, taught the kids everything he knows about vampires or Shiki, but it's easy to assume that him caring for them means that these kids would have already been told something about how to protect themselves, such as by wearing religious amulets or being in possession of any type of holy relic. If Natsuno didn't tell these kids squat on how to protect themselves, I would then first try to study up on these creatures the same way Natsuno did. Learn everything I can about the various lore and mythological tales throughout history that mentions these creatures. But their house has likely already been compromised, just like Natsuno's house. The vampires or Shiki will find their way in since they know where these kids live. So if I were these snotty-nosed kids, I would head back home, knock my mother out, sorry mom, and make sure that she goes to sleep for a long time, tie her up, steal her wallet and cash, and swipe the family truck if they have one, and go straight to another location for a night or two, like a motel or something. These kids need to hide for a period of time out in a place that is not their own registered address, and learn all that they can on what these vampire bastards are, and figure out their next move, and whether or not they should leave town, and if so, where to. Because realistically, being children, this is their best bet, and only plan that they have right now. Back at the clinic, Toshio finds out that his wife, who came to visit him, has also fallen dangerously sick. But this doctor suddenly realizes that his wife is the key to stopping the vampires. He'll need to do something horrifyingly bad to his wifey if he wants to save this town, and he prepares her to be his first vampire test subject. Meanwhile, these two kids suddenly find out that the vampire virus has just killed their dad. Their mom has no idea what's really going on and calls the town's newly opened up health clinic for help, but she has no idea of the horrors that this health clinic is capable of. Suddenly, a knock is heard at the front door, and this creepy old guy shows up, and he prepares to take their father down to their health center, called the Ibuchi Clinic. Meanwhile, across town, Toshio begins recording his fiancée's vampire transformation, and begins committing the most horrifying experiments on her to find out their weaknesses. He discovers that these creatures are sensitive to sunlight, have regenerative powers, and can't be harmed from poisons and chemicals of any kind. But suddenly, this girl wakes up shocked to find Toshio killing her slowly. She tries to break free and begs for her precious life, but Toshio ignores her completely and continues to fiddle with his wife, and not in the good way. Okay, this is insane. They got our dearly beloved and forced us to clean up their mess. Although it's about dang time that we have our very own test subject, and Toshio should have honestly done this way sooner. Basically, the stuff that he's tried out on his wife so far was something that you'd find in a kidnapper's daily work bag. And he notes that general anesthesia was not effective in working on his wife, nor was another type of general anesthetic that he used. And he even used morphine. Basically, so far, all the types of pain reliever drugs have not worked on his vampire wife, which makes me think that even though these creatures technically do not have a pulse, their body, due to the ineffectiveness of the sedation drugs that Toshio just gave, makes me think that their body is still in some type of bio-functioning state, which allows their bodily processes to metabolize whatever poison or sedative that we give them. This means that they're alive to some degree, and it also means that the vampiric or Shiki disease could conform to the laws and physics of nature. They're not Shiki or vampires due to magic or some random crap, but rather an actual disease that causes them to possess traits of a vampire. And in fact, what we see as a vampire may not even be a vampire at all, but a mere association with something that we as a society began to link to vampires. What I'm saying is that this creature could be something else entirely, such as a Wendigo, which is known to be a mythological creature that is often associated and linked to that of a werewolf, vampire, or some combination thereof. It is possible that this creature is some undead character that resembles a vampire but is not one. And it's noted that these creatures don't have pulses, but Toshio does say that as he cut into his vampiric wife's arteries, that the blood flowing through her veins suddenly stopped gushing blood, meaning that somewhere else along within her artery, her body's natural processes stopped the blood flow almost immediately. If the body stopped the blood gushing, when we cut into it, that means that there was some blood flowing through to begin with, despite them not having a pulse. You see what I'm saying? This could also mean that what what we're dealing with could be a more primitive version of what is known in folklore as a hemomancer, which is someone that can manipulate their blood at will and as a weapon. Now, I'm not saying that our wife is necessarily a hemomancer or a Wendigo. I'm just saying that maybe Toshio and everyone else should not automatically assume that just because these creatures look like vampires means that they are vampires. They could be a combination of different things that could be a creature of some other origin entirely. And just like what Natsuno did with his film watching earlier, I would look not to just folklore or tales on vampires. I would study up on various different types of mythological beasts. We're stepping out of the realm of known sciences and creatures, and by him conducting his practical experiments, this may give us a more rounded insight into what this thing is, and more importantly, how to beat it. Like Frankenstein's monster, Toshio continues to work on his monster to discover any more vampire weaknesses that he can find, realizing that even certain religious statues, sounds, and diagrams can hurt these blood-sucking creatures if they're close enough. Like a zombie, he discovers that the only surefire way to kill a vampire is by cutting off their head. This is how you kill these undead monsters. Toshio realizes that he's finally figured out how to stop these things, and he prepares his fiancée for her final experiment with a stake to the beating heart, silencing her screams of pain and fear once and for all. Mercy killing, of course. But suddenly his vampire-killing assistant and best friend Seishin stumbles into the room and sees the horrors in the flesh. He freaks out and thinks that trying to save this town has turned Toshio into a madman. Later, Toshio continues his detective work and discovers that while this virus has killed dozens of people so far, none of them have really died, at least according to the town's records. This shocks Toshio as he realizes that everyone working at this town center are all vampires. Toshio stands paralyzed in fear as this office worker tells him that all the villager deaths that have happened so far have happened outside of this town, and that's how this village has managed to keep its town death count to a 0, making sure that no outside government or police force finds out what's really going on in this town. What is he doing? Seeing all of these vampire employees go about their workday means that this town is not merely a buffet for these monsters to feast from, but it actually has all the workings of a town infiltration. This means that these vampires or Shiki aren't making any noise in how they've been killing people, and now have begun the process of replacing the entire town with their undead counterparts. If they were just killing people, it would be a lot easier on us, because it would be a lot harder to hide the mounting pile of dead bodies. It would be easier for us as humans to leave the town and get outside help, as well as convince the outsiders of what is really going on. But since this town is already halfway on the verge of being replaced with basically vampires, this means that even if we could get outside help, we won't really be able to prove what's going on, because how could we prove to anyone on the outside that people have been dying and that vampires have taken over when literally the town's death records are at 0? Literally, every single person who is a vampire is still working all the jobs that this little podunk town would have. This whole situation is nuts. It's insane. If I'm Toshio, I'd call this situation a day and bounce, leave town immediately without aggravating the things in this office, because it's clear now that we are vastly outnumbered. And here's why we should leave. 1, without any evidence, we don't have a case, and if we're dead, we can't present this case. The only last-minute resort I would do before bouncing out and getting out of Dodge would be to create some sort of big enough of a draw to have outside attention come in, because remember, this town has been described as being isolated and cut off from the rest of the country for the most part, and so our best and only card left to draw from would be in the form of a wild card. We set off a bunch of forest fires and also create a bunch of explosions of some kind, big enough to kill at least a few innocent people, I'm sorry, but it's for the greater good. And in doing this, I think this will be the most effective method to draw that outside attention in, because the vampires or Shiki up until now have been very methodical with how they've kept the death count to 0. But I ask you this, how will it look when all of a sudden a large number of people suddenly die within the town due to a sudden explosion? This will look suspicious as hell and will no doubt attract attention from outside forces and will influence the outside factors that these Shiki will be unable to predict. I'm not saying this plan will necessarily defeat the Shiki, but it will take away some of the control that these things have been exerting on this town so far. However, if we want to seal the deal that outside help does come, all we have to do is this: leave town as soon as possible, go to a highly populated area, and then make an anonymous call, telling the authorities that there's going to be a series of bombs going off in our village, and we were the ones that made them. We'll let a few hours go by and let the first of our explosives go off. We'll call again, informing them that the first explosive has just gone off. This will make sure that the authorities are taking this seriously and get their behind shrines over to our village. A little bit extreme, yes, but totally worth it. Enraged, Toshio threatens to expose them all, but then suddenly he hears someone talking to him and turns around. He sees a horrifying vampire Lord Guy's girl. She introduces herself as Chizuru and tells Toshio that he better stop his vampire killing quest, or else she'll let all of the Shiki in here eat him for dinner right here, right now. But she doesn't want to do that, as she likes to feed exclusively on virile young men just like him, so she lets him go for now. Elsewhere, another death in the village takes place, and the bodies rack up at the Ibuchi clinic. But no one here realizes that this strange clinic is where their dead come back to life, and this group of savage monsters begins recruiting more and more members. Toshio begins losing hope, as all of his nurses quit and leave the clinic for good, saying that they don't even recognize him anymore. But all of a sudden, something insane shows up right at Toshio's doorstep. Natsuno, back from the dead, and he briefly stops by to let Toshio know that he's not alone in this fight, and tells him that the only way to stop these horrifying monsters will be to catch them with their pants down. The next morning, these kids find out that just like their father, their mother has just died, which angers the duo, and this is the last straw. But this kid especially thinks he's more man than boy, and runs off to fight solo last minute, roaming the streets with rage and fury. He finds what looks like an abandoned and closed-off building, but he thinks this is the secret home for a vampire or Shiki nest. He runs inside without any backup like an idiot, and finds a single sleeping vampire, one whisper away from waking up. With nothing to lose anymore, he prepares to kill this bastard here and now, but suddenly fudges it up and gets knocked out. Later that day, Natsuno shows up again to speak with Toshio and mentions of a plan to reveal to this village the existence of vampires once and for all, using the up-and-coming town festival as the perfect opportunity. He tells Toshio that they must kill them all, including him, and the two get to work on their final plan. But the next day couldn't be more horrifying, as Toshio wakes up exhausted as hell and finds the Grim Reaper standing right in front of him, Chizuru. Toshio tries to kill her, but his stake is suddenly shot from the window by Chizuru's helper, Lord Guy. Toshio then suddenly declares that he's done trying to help ungrateful people, and now that he is finally ready to walk over to the dark side. Chizuru is delighted to hear this, as she gets her little man toy and bites on his sweet flesh, and she puts him under her spell and orders him to destroy all of his vampire research and obey her from now on. Later that day, blue-haired guy arranges a meeting with Natsuno. Unlike everybody else, he knows that this kid is unique and is not obeying any orders, and mentions to Natsuno that he already knows that he's just like blue-haired guy. Natsuno has turned into something more than just a normal Shiki or a vampire, basically. He's turned into a Jinro, a vampire basically like Blade, stronger, faster than any ordinary Shiki, and can survive the sun. But these creatures still need to feed on human flesh in order to maintain their powers, and he can tell that Natsuno hasn't fed on anything. Blue-haired guy tells Natsuno that if he doesn't join the vampire side soon, he'll die, and he leaves Natsuno to think about his horrifying offer. Okay, this is insane! What blue-haired guy is basically saying is that him and Natsuno are part of a subspecies of vampire that basically function like Blade from the Marvel comics. All of the benefits of a vampire with no real weaknesses. Unlike regular poo-poo Shiki, these guys transform right at the brink of death, technically never actually dying, just transforming. This could explain how their physiology differs than regular Shiki, who only transform after their human death. And if we look carefully, blue-haired guy as a Jinro has been calm as balls throughout this entire situation up until now. Jinro in general have a brain that functions much more similar to that of a human, allowing them to have all the ruthlessness and power that comes with being a Shiki, along with being able to control their emotions perfectly, being able to survive out in the sun and live on human food. But the fact that blue-haired guy just lost his cool here makes me think that we can use this. If we're able to enrage him in some way and make him react to a situation on instinct and feeling rather than logic. Have you ever seen an animal lose their shit? That's the plan here. In this sense, I would begin by considering any and all things that blue-haired guy cares about, such as white-haired chick Chizuru herself. If we can find a way for someone to hold her hostage and hurt her in front of blue-haired guy, I think we could have a real shot at angering him to the point where his rage clouds his judgment, allowing us to kill both of them, which would devastate the Shiki side. Or even more ideally, by holding Chizuru hostage, we'll be able to bend blue-haired guy to our will. Also, if I was a Jinro like Natsuno, I'd spend less time moping around and dressed like a goth boy and would spend more time trying to understand just how powerful I can be as a Shiki vampire hybrid. Natsuno should take some time now while he's free and test out his powers by himself. He could get super creative and kidnap a regular, weaker Shiki vampire to test his powers on. He'll be able to channel his inner psychopath and make this Shiki his little plaything. I'm just saying, he's gotta get a move on and figure out his powers ASAP. Back at the clinic, Toshio, now under Chizuru's mind control, reports to her that he's destroyed all of his vampire research. He suddenly notices the lights from the town festival in the distance and suggests that they should pay the festival a visit, and Chizuru agrees. On the way, she tells Toshio all about their evil plan to take over this entire village and use it as a central hub. These creatures are tired of hiding and their plan is almost complete. Toshio then says that celebrations are then in order, and he promises to show her a night that she'll remember forever. They then meet a bunch of the villagers when all of a sudden, Chizuru sees the temple statues nearby and she begins freaking out, wanting to go home. She demands that Toshio obey her orders, but Toshio doesn't listen. She realizes that the impossible has happened and that Toshio is somehow no longer under her spell. A villager all of a sudden notices her dead, cold skin, and Toshio says that she's fallen dangerously ill and that she needs to go to rest in the office nearby. Chizuru starts freaking out, but that's when she notices something insane on Toshio's neck. She sees an older bite mark on his neck that isn't hers, but Natsuno's, meaning that Toshio has always been Natsuno's slave, not hers. This was their plan all along. Toshio finally yells out the horrifying truth in front of everybody that Chizuru here is an Okiagari, a Shiki or vampire, forcing these villagers to check her pulse. And one by one, everyone realizes the horrifying truth. This guy suddenly steps in and the gang brutally murders Chizuru right here and now. Toshio then reveals to everyone here that the whole vampire story, who they are, what's really going on in this village, and how to kill them. And he prepares all of these people for the hunt of their lives, and they try to take back their town. Okay, this is some next level type stuff. I'm talking like Evian water type of bullcrap. We finally have the villagers on our side, which is great, and the entire town is almost under the vampire's thumbs, which is not so great. Here's what we're going to do. We're not going to go to the police, even the police in another town nearby. That won't work, as we have little evidence to show them, unlike these townsfolk who now know thanks to Chizuru being dead. They finally believe us, but here's the thing. If we want to play it smart, I'm going to tell all these townsfolk to let it be until morning. If we're going to hunt these things, we're going to do it right, because most of them will be forced to hide from the sun, which will definitely increase our odds of survival and help us in finding them, because they're not going to be able to wander around all that much. We're going to hunt them down while the sun is out, not right now while it's night. That will give the Shiki an advantage if we do, and would only result in more human deaths. I would tell the villagers to all stay right here and park it right next to those temple statues. The Shiki seem unable to handle being near those things, which is great for us. So we're all going to stay right near those things until morning. We'll pick out some of the civilians who are more capable than others and rotate out throughout the night, allowing everybody to get some form of rest while still having some people on the lookout in case some Shiki come by to visit. Early morning the next day, the news of Chizuru's death reaches the mansion, and Seishin here says that the villagers will most likely come for their throats next. Blue-haired guy says that they should leave town, but this annoying little bloodsucker called Sunako says that they have nowhere to go. So all they can do now is survive. But this little girl is the Shiki boss and orders blue-haired guy to go cut off the snake's head. The now leader of the humans, Toshio, but it's already too late. The sun has begun to rise and these villagers have already stormed the vampire mansion. Blue-haired guy quickly tells Seishin to go watch over Sunako as he leaves to go kill Toshio. The villagers start killing every single blood-sucking bastard they see. It's a bloodbath. Meanwhile, Toshio tells the villagers to bury all of these vampires, so no outside police force ever discovers them. But something is not right, and Toshio tells this beard dude that there should be 7 more Shiki hiding somewhere, and thinks that they must be hiding within the town's underground tunnels. They gather outside and prepare to go down through those tunnels, when all of a sudden, this rando is shot dead by Lord Guy. Hearing the shots, Natsuno rushes in to try and stop him, but suddenly gets shot by Lord Guy, and he escapes. Okay, this is some authentic microwave pasta from Italy type of bullshit. This Lord Guy should have been stopped since way back, since from the very fact that he is human, and Toshio being the one who actually examined him earlier means that Natsuno Natsuno could have been informed of this Lord guy way earlier, when he actually could have stopped him before he just killed this dude. And even then, Natsuno could have just snuck up on him without announcing his presence like an idiot. And now we're presented with a huge problem. Humans empathetic to vampires who want to help them, either because they feel sorry for them or they want to become just like them. And that is a problem that we cannot have, not right now. So here's what we're going to do. Beard Guy will be in charge of one group of townsfolk, Toshio in charge of another, and we will be in charge of another one. By breaking up the townsfolk into 3 groups and placing strong leaders at the head of each group, this will help reduce the risk that the people who are squishy towards the Shiki, the ones who will not kill them or even worse, help them, will be able to influence the rest of the townsfolk into not doing what must be done. And we can even take this one step further by having Beard Guy, Toshio, and us look for the person in each of their own group who hates the Shiki the most and make that person their second in command, which will then allow us to split up the townsfolk even more and reduce the possibility of the squishies taking over even further. And this will help establish a clear chain of command and allow us to kill the Shiki more effectively. Back at the castle, blue-haired guy realizes that he can't take on this many people on his own and slips back into the shadows. He finds Seishin and Tsuneko and tells them that almost all of their kind has been wiped out, meaning this group is running out of time to escape. But Toshio and his army of ordinary killers begin to realize that their winning streak is about to come to a horrifying end if they don't speed up their mission. This guy tells Toshio that people from the next town over have started to wonder why all the roads into this town have been blocked, and that the delivery men and drivers have been unable to enter this town. They're running out of time. People are asking too many questions about what's really going on in this town. Toshio then realizes that they must kill every single Shiki here by the next morning, or else some of them will escape for good. But Toshio doesn't realize that the killing is about to get oh so much worse. This guy suddenly reports that some of the villagers have begun killing other humans who they thought were under a Shiki's spell. And this makes the rest of these villagers realize that they can't trust anybody and must kill anyone who gets in their way, even their very own friends and neighbors. And now this group of hungry killers head down into the sewers to kill the last remaining Okiagari that are hiding, even the scared ones. And now both sides fight for their lives. The whole town has gone nuts, and it's a bloodbath. Countless humans and vampires get brutally murdered within minutes, and these villagers drag the last remaining vampires out and chain them to these trees, watching them burn, and they sing beautiful songs to mask their horrifying screams. Even Lord Guy gets found and hypnotized by Natsuno to burn himself alive. The screams have now reached the burning vampire mansion, and underneath its structure, blue-haired guy finally comes up with a plan to help Tsuneko and Seishin escape, ordering them to sneak into this car and drive out the back, and he'll distract the villagers. But outside, Toshio and the villagers accidentally discover Seishin on the run and chase him down. Just then, his car comes to a horrifying halt. Seishin, now badly injured, drags Tsuneko in this briefcase around the mountain houses and temples, and he hides and watches his innocent parents get brutally murdered by their very own neighbors. This horrifies poor Seishin. Desperate and losing blood fast, he hides Tsuneko under this rock and leads the villagers the other way. But he suddenly passes out and leaves poor Tsuneko out in the open, just as these hunters realize that their precious town is going up in flames. This old guy tells the rest to go get help from Toshio, and he decides to handle little Tsuneko himself. Meanwhile, Toshio gathers the terrified townsfolk and tells them to dump all of the bodies into the fire and to leave this town for good, because nobody can find out what went down in this village. Right near the fire, a badly injured blue-haired guy tries to escape this town as one of the last Shiki or vampires left alive, but he runs into Natsuno, whose plan has all come together. The two Jinro battle it out for a horrifying last stand, but Natsuno gets beaten to a bloody pulp and falls into a vampire gravesite on his deathbed. Blue-haired guy prepares to kill him until he sees Natsuno's explosive package, and he blows up blue-haired guy all the way down to hell with him. Okay, this is some overpriced Benihana type of bullcrap. Natsuno should not have offed himself the way he did, and his annoying, emo self-hating persona. Having someone alive from the Jinro species meant that he could have done wonders for the benefit of humanity in the form of helping us advance in medical innovations, since we could have found out so much in terms of how his vampire body works, and and how it could benefit the human race. Toshio is a medical man. He should have taken note that Natsuno's self-hating ways meant that he was gonna off himself after this vampire crusade was over, especially after Natsuno literally said to Toshio, hey, make sure you kill me after this is all done. Toshio should have taken the hint and tied him up Beef Wellington style, just like Gordon Ramsay down in his basement. And from there, Toshio could keep experimenting on Toshio, all for the good of humanity. Elsewhere, the fire has engulfed the entire town, and Tsuneko finally collapses in this building, exhausted as hell. But old guy isn't far behind, and he picks her up and he readies his stake. But suddenly he gets killed by Seishin, who is now a Shiki back from the dead. Ashamed of all of the deaths, Tsuneko gets ready to die right here and now, but Seishin convinces her that she's a good person. All the while, as Toshio and the rest of the survivors escape their destroyed town, Seishin escapes with Tsuneko into the bosom of a new dawn.
If you don't want to get caught in the middle of the war between humans and vampires, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and check out the How to Beat playlist down below.